this video, I'm going to give you a very quick introduction into the getting things done method. And in David Allen's own words, this is just a system for focusing on what matters most without letting anything fall through the cracks. It's 5 steps, and we'll go into at least 3 of the steps in this video. And I think the best way to intro this is to look at the problem that it's trying to address. And this is a little slide I made a while back. It's basically this. I'm sure you have some sort of intuitive recognition here, but life is full of stuff, especially in our generation, especially for founders, for leaders. There are so many different things that are competing for our attention, and it's just been growing. It's been accelerating. You got your Slack messages, you got your email, you got the things that you wrote down for yourself, you got requests from people you love, you got physical items, you got mail, you got Chrome tabs, just an insane amount, a disgusting amount of Chrome tabs taking up literal RAM on your computer, but also mental RAM. And this leads to stress. This leads to stress and ambient anxiety. So David Allen likes to say, stress is just poorly managed internal commitments. And most people have this ambient sense of anxiety, like just things aren't fully settled. They can't fully go to sleep at night thinking they had a good day because something is not attended to. And they don't even know what's possible. That's the thing. They don't even know it's possible to experience peace about all the different things that you are responsible for. And that's what GTD is hoping to address. Now, there's another problem here, which is we can only work on one thing at a time. So how do you go from all this to working on the one thing at a time that you should be working on? And I won't go too much into this, but there are books. This is a great book, Cal Newport, on deep work and how this monotasking thing is becoming increasingly rare because of the problem above. And also, there's been a long cognitive science literature, at least 15 years worth. I used to work at this behavioral sciences firm, and we'd always talk about this stuff. But basically, the human brain has evolved just a single task. Multitasking is a complete myth. So how do we go from all this stuff to monotasking on the most important stuff and then feeling good about it, feeling like I picked the right thing, and then noticing that our lives are moving in the direction that we want them to move in? Well, it comes down to these 5 steps. Capture all the stuff somewhere, clarify what that stuff is, organize it in a system that you can trust and refer to when you need to, reflect on that system, refer to it, make sure it's up to date, and then ultimately pick something and engage with it. And engage could mean deciding not to do it. You just close the browser tab, unsubscribe from the email, renegotiate the agreement you had with someone or with yourself, or you sit down and you do it. And this is the realm of deep work and Pomodoros and that kind of thing. A key insight into all this is your mind is for having ideas, not holding on to them. So these 5 steps, especially the capture part, gets that stuff out of your head. So I'm going to give you a very quick demo on a couple of these steps. But before we get into that, there's a couple things I want to say about them. First, I don't think this is just some dude's opinion on productivity. I actually think these are just stable features of human cognition. And there are examples in history of creative people and artists and composers that describe their creative process, and it maps directly onto these steps. At some point, they have to capture their ideas, they have to clarify what they are, they put them in some trusted space. Sometimes it's very simple, it's like a physical notebook, and they review it just enough so that they stay abreast with their commitments, and then they have to engage with deep work practices. The other thing I want to say about these steps is that they're kind of like basic moves. So a basic move is like the right jab of a boxer. It's like the Miyagi stuff, wax on, wax off. Or my personal favorite example is chef. A chef has all these micro skills that they're using on a daily basis. And one of the most basic ones is their knife skills. They just internalize that. They practice it thousands and thousands of times, and they can cut things with their eyes closed, basically. And they need to be able to do that because they're in this high stress environment where they're creating beautiful product at the end of a process. This knife skill, GTD is basically like a knife skill or the right jab for knowledge workers, for founders, for people who have complex projects that they're managing across time. And I love this quote by Bruce Lee. Don't fear the man who knows 1,000 techniques, but fear the man that has practiced one technique 1,000 times. Don't fear the man who knows 1,000 productivity apps and approaches, but fear the man that practiced one of them 1,000 times. And that's what we're going to do, because this is like learning any skill. It's going to take practice. So what are we practicing? Today, I'm going to highlight these 2 steps right here, because once you get this, the rest kind of engenders itself. And most people understand what it means to engage with something. There's obviously stuff for improving that, like Cal Newport's book deals with engagement. But capture and clarify kind of generates the rest of the system, because every single one of these steps solves a problem and creates a problem for the next step to solve. So we have the top of the funnel up here, all that stuff on the left-hand side. We got to capture it and put it into one place. And this could be as simple as writing things down in a fresh Google Doc. Could be writing things on a notepad, or it could be a little more sophisticated, like using a to-do list app like this and capturing thought, an open loop, something that came up that I need to deal with later, into a digital inbox, which I'll show you now. So just duplicate here, but yeah, this is a little inbox of different things that I might need to do something with. Don't worry about this. We'll get into the details of how to use apps in a later session. But once you capture all that, you now have a list of stuff, right? It's maybe a little more organized and legible than this, but it's still unclear. So you got to clarify what that stuff is. So let's take the conflict with GF one, because that's pretty ambiguous. The basic skill for clarification is get really clear on the outcome that you want here, and what is the next physical action that'll move us incrementally closer to that outcome. Now, this sounds super basic, but most people don't do this consciously. A lot of people, you probably are an example of this, are doing versions of this all the time, especially if you're in a leadership position, because people are looking to you for what the next outcome is. But taking time to practice this, like writing it down, is really good to get that basic move in, and then eventually it becomes second nature. So let's take this example. The issue comes up as, okay, we had an argument the day before and I don't feel good about it. Conflict with GF. It's a simple way to write that down. What do I really want here? It's like, well, I want to be at peace with her about this particular issue. That's it. It's like an emotional state, really. Maybe I even picture us giving each other a hug or something like that. And then it's like, well, how do I do that? Well, I got to talk to her. So maybe the next physical action is to send a text. And it's super basic, but if you don't do that, this open loop will just kind of stay in the back of your mind, causing you stress. Once you clarify everything, you have this problem of, where do I put all this stuff? And we'll talk about this in another video, but basically you just need a trusted spot. And it could be a notebook, it could be this one Google Doc you keep coming back to, or it could be that Things app that I just showed you. Each of them have their trade-offs. And then once you have that in the system, you have to look at it. It has to be a part of your life. You have to spend time with it so that you can keep it clear and up to date, but also so that you can read it to find out what to do next. And then you select an action to work on. So those are the 5 steps of GTD. And this is where people tend to get caught up, because this is where all the tools and apps come in. This is where all the debates are. But if you could just take one thing away from this video, it would be these 3 steps: capture, clarify, and engage. That's it. Whenever you're in a situation where you don't know what to do next, just write down the open loops in your mind, open a Google Doc. It takes 5 minutes. Pick 1 or 2 of these things that seem the most ambiguous, clarify them, which means write the outcome of the next action, and then start acting on it. And that is GTD. That is GTD in a nutshell.